The Grand Hall in Geneva, a place synonymous with international diplomacy and high-stakes negotiations, stood ready. Its polished floors reflected the anticipation hanging in the air, and the flags of countless nations lined the walls, a silent testament to the global significance of the event about to unfold. The hall buzzed with a palpable tension, a low hum of hushed conversations and nervous energy. Deals were being struck in corners, alliances forged with handshakes, and strategies whispered behind closed doors. World leaders, dignitaries and experts from every corner of the globe gathered for the Global Health Summit, a critical meeting convened to address some of the most pressing challenges facing humanity. The weight of expectation was heavy, the stakes immeasurably high. Presidents, prime ministers and health ministers, all impeccably dressed and radiating authority, took their seats, their faces etched with a mixture of determination and concern. They represented the power and resources of their nations, but also the vulnerabilities. Representatives from every continent, a mosaic of cultures and perspectives, filled the auditorium. Each delegate carried the hopes and fears of their people, their voices adding to the complex symphony of the summit. They were here to tackle the urgent issue of pandemic preparedness, learning from the past, and striving to build a more resilient future. The specter of recent global health crises loomed large, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of inaction. Vaccine equity, a moral imperative and a practical necessity, was also high on the agenda. Ensuring fair and equitable access to life-saving vaccines for all, regardless of nationality or economic status, was a challenge that demanded immediate attention. And the discussion extended to the crumbling healthcare systems in many parts of the world, systems strained to the breaking point by years of neglect and underfunding. Strengthening these systems was crucial to safeguarding global health security. The air was thick with high-stakes conversations, the weight of global responsibility pressing down on every shoulder. Every word, every gesture, carried the potential to shape the future of global health. Scientific jargon filled the room, a testament to the complex challenges at hand, punctuated by the constant hum of translators working tirelessly to bridge the language barriers. Communication was key, ensuring that every voice could be heard and understood. The day's speeches had been largely predictable, a familiar script of well-intentioned platitudes and carefully crafted pronouncements. Big words, familiar promises, the kind that often faded into the background noise of international summits. And frankly, little inspiration. The audience had grown accustomed to the predictable rhythm of these events, but then, a subtle shift rippled through the room, an almost imperceptible change in the atmosphere. It began as the moderator approached the podium to announce the next speaker, the President of Ghana. For many in the audience, Africa was usually a topic of discussion, a subject to be analyzed and debated. Rarely was it a voice at the table, an active participant in shaping the global agenda. The anticipation was different this time, a sense that something significant was about to happen. This wasn't just another plea for aid or assistance. This was a moment for a perspective rarely heard on the main stage, a chance to challenge conventional wisdom and offer a new vision for global health. As the lights dimmed, focusing attention on the podium, a hush fell over the room. And as the moderator began the introduction, carefully choosing his words to highlight the president's accomplishments and the significance of his presence, the tension in the room grew thicker. World leaders straightened up in their seats, their eyes fixed on the stage, their minds racing with possibilities. They were sensing that something new was coming, a challenge to the established order, a fresh perspective on the global health landscape. The world's most powerful people were ready to listen, their ears open to a voice that had often been marginalized. Perhaps out of courtesy, a sense of diplomatic obligation to hear out a fellow head of state, but perhaps also out of genuine curiosity, a recognition that the old ways of doing things were no longer sufficient to address the complex challenges of the 21st century. The stage was set for more than just another speech. It was set for a potential paradigm shift, a moment of reckoning for the global health community. It was set for a potential turning point, a chance to forge a new path towards a healthier and more equitable world. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, a palpable sense of expectation hanging in the air. The stakes were high, the future of global health hanging in the balance, and the world was about to hear a voice it couldn't ignore, a voice that demanded to be heard, a voice that represented the hopes and aspirations of a continent. The President of Ghana was about to speak, his words carefully chosen, his message carefully crafted. He was speaking not just for his country, but as a representative of a larger cause. He was speaking for a continent that had long been overlooked and underserved. The global conversation was about to change, and the world was about to listen. The president of Ghana, a figure of immense presence and quiet dignity, took the stage without fanfare. There was no grand entrance, no unnecessary theatrics, just a steady, purposeful walk that commanded attention nonetheless. It was just calm, deliberate confidence radiating outwards like a beacon. He surveyed the room, his gaze steady and unwavering, a silent acknowledgement of the weight of responsibility he carried. He wore a vibrant kente cloth, a masterpiece of woven artistry. Each color and pattern told a story, a silent narrative of his nation's history and its aspirations for the future. It was a striking contrast to the sea of dark suits, a deliberate choice that spoke volumes. It was a visual declaration of identity, a refusal to be subsumed by the uniformity of international diplomacy. It was a visual reminder that leadership comes in many forms, that strength isn't always found in conformity, but often in the courage to stand apart, to embrace one's unique heritage. The room fell silent. An almost palpable hush descended. It wasn't out of mere protocol but out of genuine respect, a recognition of the man's inherent dignity and the significance of the moment. He made eye contact across the hall, a deliberate act of connection. He was connecting with leaders and delegates alike, acknowledging their presence, their shared responsibility in shaping the future. Phones were put away, a rare sight in today's world. Attention was undivided, focused entirely on the man at the podium. His presence alone shifted the dynamic, subtly altering the atmosphere of the room. He belonged, not as a guest, but as an integral part of the conversation, and so did the perspective he brought, a voice that had often been marginalized, but was now rightfully taking center stage. The kente cloth wasn't just attire, it was a symbol. It was a statement of heritage and pride, a visual representation of the rich cultural tapestry that Africa brought to the global table. Before he spoke, before he uttered a single word, he'd already challenged the room's expectations, subverting preconceived notions about leadership and influence. The world's leaders leaned in, their curiosity piqued, ready for something different, something authentic, something that transcended the usual diplomatic platitudes. The president stood, not as a supplicant begging for attention or validation, but as an equal, a peer among equals, ready to contribute his wisdom and experience to the global conversation. The stage was his, not by right of power but by right of presence, and everyone knew it, felt it in the very air. This was more than a speech, it was a turning point, it was a moment of recognition, a long overdue acknowledgement of the vital role that Africa plays in the world. The world was finally ready to listen, not just to the words, but to the deeper message, the unspoken truths that resonated with the promise of a more equitable and just future. The president began not with statistics but with stories of resilience, community health workers, innovators, and the spirit of Ubuntu. He acknowledged Africa's health challenges, but reframed them as hurdles being overcome, not permanent conditions. For every problem, he offered an African solution. Drones delivering medical supplies, the Africa CDC coordinating responses, tech hubs driving innovation. His message was clear. Africa is not a problem to be solved, but a partner with solutions. He called for a partnership of equals, not charity. We do not come to you today with a begging bowl, but with a proposal for a partnership of equals, he declared. He challenged stereotypes, urging the world to see Africa's tech hubs, scientists, and dynamic youth. This was a masterclass in narrative change, an invitation to see the full, hopeful picture. The world was being asked to rethink everything it thought it knew. The president's mantra echoed, "Our health, our hands." He argued that sustainable solutions must be designed and led by Africans, who know their communities best. He shared examples, Senegal's community gatherings spreading health info, Nigerian apps fighting counterfeit drugs. These were stories of African ingenuity, not foreign intervention. Building local capacity, he said, makes Africa a stronger global partner. And Africa manufacturing its own vaccines benefits the entire world. The message was dignity and self-reliance, Africa as doctor, scientist, and leader. The world was invited to invest, collaborate, and trust African leadership. Every great speech has a line that lingers. The president paused, then said, "For centuries, the world has been discovering Africa. It is time for the world to start listening to Africa." The room fell silent. Not awkward, but thoughtful. The statement was both a gentle rebuke and a hopeful invitation. It acknowledged a painful past but looked forward. "It is time for the world to start listening" was an open door to partnership. The quote reframed the summit, not just about health, but about respect and dignity. The president wasn't asking for policy change. He was asking for a change in mindset. That single sentence became the anchor of his message. The world was challenged to see Africa as a source of wisdom and innovation. The moment would not be forgotten. The president's speech ended with a standing ovation, a powerful and spontaneous eruption of respect and agreement. It was a moment that transcended the usual polite applause that often follows diplomatic addresses. This was different. It was genuine, sustained, and different from any before. The applause continued, echoing through the hall, a testament to the impact of his words. Delegates rose to their feet, their faces reflecting a mixture of admiration and thoughtful consideration. Leaders from every continent applauded, a unified expression of support for the vision he had laid out. It was a rare display of global consensus, a moment where political differences seemed to fade in the face of a shared understanding. Many were visibly moved, their emotions reflecting the profound impact of his message. Some dabbed at their eyes. Others simply stood in stunned silence, absorbing the weight of his words. As he left the stage, he was immediately surrounded, a throng of people eager to express their appreciation and discuss the implications of his address. He was surrounded not just by African delegates, who saw in him a champion of their shared aspirations, but by world leaders eager to engage, to understand, and to explore the possibilities he had unveiled. The World Bank president shook his hand, a gesture of respect and a sign of potential collaboration. The Japanese envoy bowed deeply, a traditional expression of deference and acknowledgement of the significance of the moment. Conversations shifted, almost palpably, from a focus on Africa's problems, its challenges and its needs, to the power of its vision, its potential, and its capacity to shape its own destiny. Other African leaders showed pride and unity, a sense of collective purpose and renewed hope for the future of the continent. He had spoken for the continent, articulating its aspirations and its determination to take control of its own narrative. Delegates from NGOs and the private sector buzzed with excitement, energized by the possibilities that had been presented. They began to discuss rethinking their approach, reevaluating their strategies, and exploring new avenues for collaboration. "We need to rethink our entire Africa strategy," one executive said, capturing the sentiment of many in the room. The speech forced a new perspective, a shift in mindset that challenged long-held assumptions and opened up new possibilities. It presented Africa not as a recipient of aid but as a hub of innovation, a source of creativity, and a driver of progress. It positioned Africa as a partner in global solutions, a key player in addressing the challenges facing the world. The first tremors of a global shift were felt in that hall, a seismic event that would reshape the landscape of international relations. The world's assumptions had been shaken to their core, forcing a re-evaluation of established narratives and ingrained biases. The conversation about Africa, about its role in the world and about its future, would never be the same. Africa's voice, amplified by the president's powerful words, was now impossible to ignore, a force to be reckoned with on the global stage. The global media quickly picked up the story. Headlines focused on leadership and vision, not crisis or conflict. "A new voice for Africa," read one. "Ghana's president challenges world to listen," said another. News analysts played the "time to start listening" quote on repeat. Social media exploded, #Listen to Africa trended, and young Africans shared the speech with pride. The message became a rallying cry, breaking out of the summit and going viral. The speech didn't just change the news cycle, it changed the narrative. For the first time in years, Africa was seen through a lens of dignity and innovation. The president had launched a global campaign for a new Africa. One powerful voice had begun to change the story. The world was finally listening. The speech marked a turning point. Africa was no longer seen as a passive aid recipient, but as an essential global partner. Conversations shifted to investment, trade, and collaboration. Diplomatic and economic missions to Africa increased, not just to offer aid, but to build, invest, and innovate. Plans for vaccine manufacturing in Africa accelerated, turning talk into action. Other African leaders now had a new framework for negotiations, partnerships of equals. The speech fostered unity and confidence across the continent. Africa's success was reframed as a global imperative. The groundwork was laid for a mature, mutually beneficial relationship with the world. The echoes of that speech still resonate. It was more than a moment. It was a declaration of a new era for Africa. The challenges remain, but hope and agency are now tangible across the continent. The future of Africa is being written by Africans, in tech hubs, energy projects, and creative industries. The speech was a catalyst, crystallizing a movement already underway. Changing perceptions, the president showed that leadership is about shaping narratives. Africa is not waiting to be saved. It is rising, ready to claim its place in the world. The continent's story is one of becoming, of immense potential. The best chapters are still to be written. And now, the whole world is listening.